What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Tonight I have a very special email interview. My interviewee is Chris Dade from the UK, who runs the Bally Bingos in Britain forums and has been instrumental in work scanning and reproducing backglasses and playfield overlays for the Bally Bingo community. Question 1. Please provide your name and age. My name is Chris Dade from Ipswich, UK, and I am 67 years old. I have a very understanding wife called Paulette and 4 sons. Number 2. When and where did you see your first pinball machine, bingo or flipper? As a follow-on, when and where did you see your first bingo? He answers, I can't remember when I first saw a pinball, but it must have been in the 50s. They didn't interest me at all back then, although I'm beginning to enjoy them more now that I have some, but still second to bingo. I first saw a bingo in 1961 when I was 13. It was in a cafe called the Dimpy in Stowmarket, Suffolk, where I lived at the time. And he provides a note for us American folk. What we call cafes in the UK are more or less the same as your diners, where they normally serve fried or grilled food and cups of tea. Coffee wasn't popular over here back in the 60s. They're also fondly known as greasy spoons. Question 3. What was your first experience playing a bingo? He answers, from the time I first saw a bingo and watched it being played, I was hooked. So I played as often as possible, even truanting from school, until my money ran out. 2 games that I distinctly remember were Variety and Broadway, but I only ever played wooden-legged or railed machines, and stopped before the Magic Screen games came on the scene. Did you ever play on location? Were you skilled enough to fairly consistently win? I played the bingos in the Dimpy regularly from 1961 to 1965 when I found other interests like girls, beer, and cigarettes to keep me occupied. However, I was hooked on slot machines and still lost my money in them. As for winning, yes, I did sometimes win, but overall there's only one winner, and it certainly wasn't me. Question 5. I know next to nothing about the export market for bingos. How common were they to find on location in Great Britain? They could be found in places that working people frequent, mostly cafes and pubs, bars to you. Before many of the motorways were built in the UK, the major roads had lots of transport cafes that are like your truck stops, and these normally had at least one bingo machine and 1 or 2 slots as well. I can't confidently say that there are no more on location in the UK, but there certainly aren't many. My next question. Were they exported all through the bingo run to Great Britain, or was there a definite peak? The bingos and other US-made slot machines flooded into the UK after the 1960 Betting and Gaming Act relaxed the gaming laws. Most of the bingos were 10 years and more old when they arrived here. I've been informed this was due to the vast numbers that were stored in the US after your various states outlawed them, but I cannot be entirely sure. By the late 60s, when the authorities realized the bingos were illegal, the Magic Screen games were being imported. There are very few 20-holders here, and I suspect most of them came in from Belgium. The flasher slots, mostly made by Keeney Games Inc. in Bally, were new machines and had big jackpot payouts. They were also located in cafes and members clubs such as golf, military, and working men's associations. During the mid-60s, some British companies got in on the act and offered competition to the U.S. makers, whose imports of these machines more or less stopped in the 70s. More changes to gaming laws limited payouts to machines in the cafes to 10 coins, so the big payout machines were only found in the members clubs. An aside here from Nick, what he's saying about only importing machines 10 years or older makes a ton of sense, because, as he says, as the state started cracking down on the bingos here, there would be a huge inventory stockpiled. Operators would have a whole lot that they couldn't use anymore, and so it makes sense that they would try to sell it off, probably to fill shipping containers and so forth. Okay, back to the interview. Question 7. Your collection is beautiful, and I will link to Chris Dade's site in the show notes. Please check it out. He has got some very beautiful machines that he has meticulously restored. How did you get started on the path of owning and repairing these machines, flashers, slot machines, and other coin-operated equipment? Thank you for your kind words about my collection. I'm very proud to be the owner of these classic machines, many rescued from the scrap heap. All through my adult life, I wanted to have a slot machine and jukebox in my home, but this didn't happen until I was made redundant from work in 2000, and the payoff and pension left me financially secure. In 2002, I came across an ad for a Parade bingo machine for £200, and on contacting the seller, I was so pleased that it hadn't already been sold. This was the beginning of my collection, and there have been many to follow. I mentioned earlier that I was hooked on the high payout slot machines, and this led me to collect the US-made flashers and bandits from that period. I also managed to get an AMI Continental jukebox to complete my wish list. The machines are all housed in summer houses and log cabins in my garden, but the jukebox is indoors. Have you ever become acquainted with operators or distributors for Bally products in the UK? He answers, I've met a few operators over the years. Most of them are well into their 70s and 80s now, and they all admit to making a lot of money from the machines. One operator from the UK, Mr. Freddie Bailey, is still in the business and now lives in Edgewater, New Jersey. I had the pleasure of meeting him whilst on holiday in New York a few years ago. I was also fortunate enough to meet Phil Hooper while visiting Las Vegas. Next question. You restore cabinets and other cosmetics of your machines. How long have you been doing that detailed work? After purchasing the Parade in 2002 and the honeymoon period was over, I realized it looked like a heap of scrap, and the only thing I could do was attempt to make it look something like it did originally. After completing the restoration, it then made my other machines look tatty, so I had to restore them as well, and so it goes on. To be honest, I get more pleasure from restoring and owning them than playing. You've also been instrumental in scanning, color correcting, and printing backglass images on vinyl, as well as scanning and color correcting playfield graphics for overlay production. What inspired you to undertake this massive project? I soon realized that if a glass gets broken, then the machine is of no use to anyone, so I got a printing company to scan and merge my Miss America 57 backglass for me, and I set about repairing the damaged areas using Photoshop and creating the masking layers using a reversed image. Once it became generally known that I was reproducing the glasses, I got inquiries from them from all over the world, and if I was able to get one for scanning, I did them on request. In the UK, many of the machines had replacement glasses hand-painted on perspex, or plexiglass. As they had to be done as a mirror image, the numbers were often painted so that from the front they were facing the wrong way. I have one or two examples of these. Next. I note that folks are referred to Koos in the Netherlands for translates these days from bingo.cdyn.com. Is there anything you'd like to accomplish in the future with the artwork? For example, are you selling playfield overlays still? Koos is a very clever man and seems to find a solution for any problem. He has taken the backglass revival to a different level, and his one-piece foil is an excellent substitute for a poor glass, and of course he's produced some with the mirrored areas in direct printing, although these are not shipped and have to be collected from him in Holland. Quite simply, they're better than my two-piece laminated prints, and I only want customers to have the best, although Koos does use my digital files for a lot of his work. I do still supply the playfield overlays, although I haven't done as many of these, but they are all shown on my website. I originally did these to replace some poor quality ones during the restoration process. Question 12. As far as games, I see there's a Parade in your collection. I've never seen one in person. What do you think of the gameplay? Do the extra lines offer enough of a scoring advantage? He answers, as Parade was the first bingo I'd seen for over 35 years, it has always been very special to me and will never be sold during my lifetime. It's quite fun to play, and with the treble and quad scoring, it can pay out some decent wins. The extra lines obviously increase the chances of winning, and you can achieve a 6 in a line, but it'll only pay out on 5. It was also the first time I got all 3 extra balls from one press of the yellow button. On a side, that is a magical feeling when that happens. Okay, back to the interview. Number 13. Miami Beach with the magic curtains is another. What are your general thoughts on the gameplay? Like nearly all the early machines, it had a unique feature with the magic curtain, but to be honest, I rarely play it, or many of the others for that matter, because for me the pleasure is in the owning and restoring. When I have visitors, I usually play a few games while we're talking shop. What's been your most challenging restoration? They nearly all present some kind of challenge or another, but the Parade being the first was a tough job. I hadn't tackled anything like it before, but my past experience in the auto repair business was pretty useful, including being able to weld on occasion. Miami Beach was very tricky because of the complicated cabinet artwork and also variety for the same reason. I always strive for 100% perfection but rarely achieve it. Next question. Flasher games also feature prominently in your collection. What are some of your favorites and why? I love some of the artwork that I've seen on your site, but I've not had much experience with those types of slot machines. As with bingos, the flasher games cropped up everywhere in the early 60s, and with their jackpots of 500 coins became very addictive to a lot of people, including myself. The worst thing that can happen is to have a big win, and that's the start of the addiction. Nowadays, the addictions are from a different source. My favorites are the ones from my past, which are Keeney's, Blue Spot, and Bally Treble Chance. The Treble Chance was made for export to Europe with the soccer, football in the UK, theme, but whoever designed the backflash didn't realize that soccer pitches do not have 5-yard lines. Number 16. You also have a gorgeous original Bally Carnival in your collection, which is a flipper game. I adore the artwork on the backglass. What do you think of the gameplay? It was only acquired near the end of last year, and I had to get the backglass renewed urgently as the print was about to fall off, so I haven't really played it yet. All of my machines are outside in unheated accommodations, so it's too damn cold at the moment. What's your fondest memory of playing games on location? The sound of 100 replays being clocked off after getting a cash payout, followed closely by the sound of them clocking up in the first place. Are Bally Bingos illegal to operate in the UK? Again, my apologies. I know absolutely nothing. Answers. Under current and previous gaming laws, bingos and other games with multi-stake operating are not legal in the UK or ever have been. My belief is that the similarity with pinballs was exploited as nobody here knew the difference. Don't forget they had the amusement-only notices prominently displayed in the cabinet, and of course they didn't have a visible payout system. If they were not illegal, where are the good places to play? Although they pretty much died out in the 1970s, a few remained, and up until 2 years ago we used to have an annual visit to Pat's Cafe in Norwich, which still operated 4 machines, but sadly it's now closed down. You started many years ago the Bally Bingos in Britain forums, which are a great place for information and discussion of game maintenance, restoration, etc. What was your main goal in doing so? The motivation for starting the forum was the need for somewhere that bingo fans can seek advice with problems, etc., and not just email me and I then have to try and direct them somewhere else. I am not the fountain of all knowledge and have to seek guidance myself on many occasions. Chris Howard and Franz Pilger are very clued up and are always willing to offer good advice where needed. And here, Nick has to make an aside again. Franz, if you happen to listen to this, I apologize if I butchered your name just now. Hopefully I did not. Back to the interview. Question 21. With the Bally Bingo in Britain forums, I see there are bingo parties called Open Days in the UK. Sounds like a great time. Do you have a favorite memory or game from some of those get-togethers? Do you host any open days yourself? There have been a few open days where owners have hosted get-togethers for bingo buddies and other people to visit. A few years ago, we had an annual meeting at Pat's Cafe in Norwich, and we had people travel there from far and wide, including some of our friends from the Netherlands. Just a note here is some of your listeners will have no real idea of how big the UK is, so if you can imagine that Texas is 3 times the size of the UK, that may put it into perspective. No place in Great Britain is more than 75 miles from the coast, and the farthest points are less than 700 miles apart. In more recent years, Kevin, who also lives in Suffolk, has hosted a number of them in his business premises, which is much appreciated by those who regularly attend. I've hosted a 2-day event at my home, but the wife doesn't appreciate having strangers wandering in and out to use the bathroom. I often have 3 or 4 visitors to see and play on the machines, which doesn't present any problems. I do not play the machines very much, but enjoy circulating and talking to my buddies. Any other memories of these great games that you'd like to share? What makes them special to you? They played a very important part in my teenage years, and with the great music from the late 50s and early 60s from both sides of the Atlantic make me feel very nostalgic. It's now good to look back at those times when you reach an age where there's more time behind you than in front. And Chris concludes with this. Nick, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be part of your podcast, especially now that I know what one is. It's very comforting to know that the younger generation like you will be moving these classic games forward. I would also like to thank the good old US of A for making it all possible. I want to thank my guest, Chris Dade, for agreeing to do an email interview. I'm very excited to learn some of the history of bingos in the UK. As I stated multiple times in that interview, I know absolutely nothing. Chris, your time is very much appreciated, and I hope you all enjoyed this. And that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.